Hello, and welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Sent,
I am Axion.
and we are continuing our discussion of William Shakespeare's The Tragedy of King Lear while we play through Final Fantasy IX. Um, the airship has seen better days.
Yep.
This is why you don't let kids drive. Anyway, last time we went over the basic plot summary, as is our usual, which means it's time to move on to discussing the cast. And Shakespeare is known for creating very memorable characters. There's a reason he's still referred to so often and alluded to constantly. And King Lear is one of his better known tragedies. So I suppose it makes sense to just start with the obvious. Our main and title character, King Lear.
So Lear is the... Does it ever name what country he's the king of?
England.
Okay, it does say England. Okay, I couldn't remember. He's the king of England. He's...
Well, specifically Britain, but England, Britain, Great Britain, United Kingdom, whatever, has changed its names so many times it would make a significant portion of the US start having seizures about it.
Yay, level. He's the king of England, and he is in the interesting position of being very elderly, to the point that he is ready to retire from being king, which, as we said in a prior episode, is a thing that almost never happens. And he has no sons. This is, of course, back in the day when the eldest son would automatically inherit the majority, if not all, of the father's possessions.
Yep, patriarchal primogeniture.
And that includes, in the case of royalty such as King Lear, his kingdom.
So I am going to note here that when you say back in a time when, so King Lear is set way, way back in English mythical history. We're talking possibly roughly around the same time as Camelot stories. But that was a thing until very historically recently. It was a major plot point in a lot of Jane Austen stories, for example. So that was during the Regency period that she wrote. So that would be Prince George, when King George III couldn't really be trusted with the throne on his own. So that's founding of the United States, which again, that's a long time ago for a lot of people, but in the historical scope of things, that's pretty dang recent. So the fact that Lear is dividing this way between his daughters rather than to a distant male cousin or something is kind of a thing. Hey, Zidane's had better days.
No, this is a good day for Zidane.
I know. I'm just saying he's glowing and it's silly looking. I know what it is. I like this game. But yeah, Lear is dividing his kingdom amongst his three daughters, but as we mentioned before, the fact that he decides to do this not based on, well, I want to make sure all of my beloved children that I have raised with love and care are provided for, so I'm going to make sure they have enough, and I'm going to make sure the responsible one is taking over the affairs of state because, I'm a king and putting people in charge of my kingdom is going to be important. Because, historically speaking, when you divide a kingdom like that, Charlemagne divided his kingdom into three, and the lines along which he drew those borders have been the source of most European land war conflicts ever since Charlemagne's death. So, by all means, just go ahead and base it on vibes, like he did, which is to say, I need to have my ego primped up at all opportunities, so I will only give you your proper inheritance if you tell me you love me more than life itself. And, I wish I could say that Lear's behavior was completely unrealistic, but I have heard enough stories of narcissist parents from people that I would 110% believe that this is the thing someone would do. I don't think it makes him smart, but it's a thing I can believe that somebody would do. Also, Lear is really big on the whole I wish to have my cake and eat it too style of thing. He divides his kingdom, but he still wants to have the ability to boss people around like a king, even though, yep, I have stepped down and divided my power amongst you three, figure it out. Or more accurately, amongst you two, because Cordelia didn't play the game well enough just for my ego to be sated. And now I'm going to be mad that, you're not doing what I say, even though I have actively ceded all of my authority. As you might expect, the play is basically Lear starts finding out.
Yep.
And he is a changed and broken shell of himself by the end of the play, having had it repeatedly rubbed in his face that, yeah, well, no, your daughters don't have to listen to you anymore. You gave them the power not to. You don't have the authority to be a king anymore, so you're now wandering alone with just your court jester for company, who's constantly reminding you that you did this to yourself, and ultimately you get to live just long enough to see your favorite child, with whom you've just reconciled, cruelly executed for, being a prisoner of war, and are too heartbroken to continue living, knowing that you are the ultimate cause of all of this. And I think with Lear, I am going to double down on the narcissistic parent thing, because a lot of people go through similar, where they, like Cordelia, are a devoted and loving child who do what they're supposed to whenever they need to, and, well, it's all for nothing because they haven't played the game well enough, and they're the ones who ultimately suffer, while those who twist the world to their whims thrive, as long as they have the power to do so. Had Lear maintained any sort of authority, I don't think he would have learned his lesson. And I'm not really sure it counts as learning a lesson, because he basically just learns he can't live anymore like this. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, the reasonable answer would be the daughters.
Okay, there's
So, we start at the beginning with Goneril.
Alright, Goneril is the oldest. She is the most ruthless of the three daughters. Regan wishes she could keep up. But, yeah, she is very, very schemy, plots to kill her husband so she can marry Edmund, manages to take control of the army away from her husband, the Duke of Albany, and, yeah, ultimately poisons Regan. So, yeah, Goneril, not super fun. Also noting, again, the fact that she is this forward with taking an active role in politics and as aggressive and cruel as she is, not something that would have been typically associated with a female character back in Shakespeare's day, so that's an extra dimension to consider.
I can never keep track of which one is which in my head of the husbands.
Goneril, I just said, is married to the Duke of Albany.
Right, yeah, and the other one is Cornwall?
Yes. Yeah, Goneril is the first one to basically put Lear in his place, and honestly, as we mentioned with our plot summary, I don't think it was it came across as so ingrateful, as ingratitude and shocking as it was to Lear, because the objection she raised in the script is, your knights are awful, Like they're really expensive to maintain, and we can't really afford that since again we have half of what you should have had for the kingdom. And they are unruly, they are raucous, they are extremely rude to the people in my household. Control them. Oh, you don't want to control them? Get rid of them. Which I think is reasonable. That said, the fact that she's also very quick to write to Regan and warn her, like, yeah, no, you also treat him like this because he's going to just keep walking over us, it does show some manipulativeness of the fact that, I'm going to make sure that my dog has opinions on this, that my sister also is turned against my father. And then, of course, there's the whole everything to do with Edmund and the poisoning of Regan. By contrast, her husband, the Duke of Albany, is one of the nicer characters in the play, so you kind of wonder how those two haven't killed each other by this point. He stands up to Goneril when he's able to, and ultimately has to pick up the pieces at the end of the story when he and Edgar are like the only ones left standing.
Yep. He's actually, not a terrible guy, just... What's the word I'm looking for here?
Well, when you are in the world of arranged marriages, you don't always get love as a factor.
Well, yeah, that's a given.
So, like, the fact that he married, like, one of the king's daughters would have been a great move, and honestly, at this point in history, he can probably just be out with war and stuff and away from home long enough that they probably don't have as much interaction as they could.
Yep. You're being weird, dude.
But yeah, something else I kind of want to point out is like the femininity masculinity traits thing that come up with Goneril. It's kind of a similar thing you see with Lady Macbeth, but Goneril never goes so far as to declare that she doesn't want to have any of her weak feminine qualities like Lady Macbeth does. And I'm sure we will get into that when we eventually get around to Macbeth, because there's no way we're going to keep this channel going for for as long as we'd like to without having more Shakespeare.
Yep, especially since we've kind of tied it to this game now, and we both like this game.
Yeah. Yeah, not a whole lot to say about Albany, though. Regan, I also kind of find a little bit middling. Like, she wants to be as ruthless as Goneril, but she never quite does. But, well, she is a party to the cruelest act in the play, I think. The blinding of Gloucester.
Yep, I was about to say, the blinding the old man.
Yeah, though I believe that was more her husband's idea, and Cornwall is one of the more reprehensible people in the play. Regan basically gets manipulated by Goneril here and there, like she's on the same page as her, but Goneril's the one who takes the initiative and ultimately kills her sister. Um, she also has, like, Regan also has an interest in Edmund, so that's why Goneril has to get her out of the way to make sure there's no competition, but it doesn't work out. So I guess it's just middle child syndrome, but with murder this time.
So that brings us to Cordelia.
Cordelia is the good kid. Um, but the fact that she's the honest one is what causes the problems, because Lear does not like the fact that she is willing to stand up to him. She's not going to play his game. It's like, I love you as much as it's appropriate for a daughter to love her father. I can't say more than that. It would be a lie, because what would be the point of having a husband if I love you more than I can possibly love my husband? Lear takes offense to this, disowns her, and she immediately marries the King of France. And basically, if she didn't come back to England, she could have made out better than the entire cast put together.
Yep. She basically had it set.
But she's a dutiful daughter, so she came back to take care of her father, because she didn't trust, and rightly so, her sisters to do it. Unfortunately, it's too late by the time she comes back. Lear's already lost his mind. There's a war going on, and, well, when you're associated with the defeated army, it's not going to go so great for you. But she's also a very quiet person. She doesn't really talk a whole lot. Like, she's only in the play at the very beginning and the very end because of the aforementioned disowning.
Yep.
So
And
it's...
she spends a decent amount of her lines talking to herself.
Yep. So yeah, it's kind of hard to get a read on her ultimate motivations, because, like, again, at the beginning we just know she's like, well, I don't really know what I'm not sure what I can say here. I can't put the love I have for you into words in a way that is going to satisfy you.
Yep. And she knows that any attempt to follow up on her sister's style, for lack of a better word, is going to end up as insincere.
Yep. So she's like, I can't lie to you. I don't want to, but I have a feeling it's not going to end well for me, but there's nothing I can do about that.
And it doesn't.
So yeah, she marries the King of France, who is happy enough to just say, look, she is a dowry in and of herself. After Burgundy turns her down, because I'll marry her if you give the dowry you promised. No, she has hurt my feelings. Okay, I'll marry her then. She's awesome. So yeah, good job, France. Too bad I didn't save her. I believe the next person of importance would be Gloucester.
Yeah. Gloucester and Kent. But we can start with Gloucester.
Yeah, Gloucester's more major, because, like, remember, we have the two main plot threads. We have, like, the Lear and daughters plot line, and then we've got the Gloucester and sons plot line. So Gloucester is an earl. He's lower ranked than some, but he is loyal to King Lear, and, therefore, that's actually what gets him in trouble later, because he is known to be loyal to Lear when Goneril and Regan have turned against him, and that is what Cornwall deems sufficient to deem him a traitor. But he doesn't really do a whole lot other than get fooled early on, because he has two sons, one of whom is illegitimate. He loves them both, but again, with the whole patriarchal primogeniture thing, Edmund's not going to get a whole lot in the inheritance just because of how the laws work. And he doesn't look into any of the stories that Edmund tells him at all. Like,
Yep.
He just takes it.
He goes in with the assumption that Edmund was telling him the truth and doesn't bother to confirm.
Yep. So even though Edgar has shown no indication that any of this would be in his personality to attempt, he fully believes Edmund without trying to talk to Edgar and confirm. So Edmund is very good at keeping them apart from each other.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let me talk to him. I'll try and smooth things over for you. Thank you. You're the best brother. Edgar could also use some sense motive. But yeah, so ultimately, when he stays loyal to Lear, he is blinded for his pains and wanders until a disguised Edgar finds him, and when he discovers it is Edgar, the overwhelming joy is too much for him, and he basically just dies of a heart attack.
Whoops. Let's try that again. So, that brings us to the sons.
Which one first?
Well, we're introduced to Edmund first, I believe.
Yep, the bastard.
Like I said in the prior episode, I'm going to get those two mixed up constantly. Just, Gloucester, why did you name your kids Edgar and Edmund? That's just... And Shakespeare, why did you name your characters, the two brother characters, that?
Have you never met families that do that theming?
As I said, yes, but it's more commonly like... For some reason, it's always J's. So you'll have Jason and John and Jesse and Joseph and so on and so forth. And those are easier to tell apart than Edgar and Edmund. Those are a little too similar, at least in my experience.
Okay. Yeah, Edmund is the bastard's bastard. Like, he is, first and foremost, a literal bastard, an illegitimate child who is somewhat unusually recognized and loved by his parent. So, I mean, he's actually a lot better off than most people in his position would be. But it's not enough. Like, he wants everything that's due to Edgar.
Yep, he wants to be completely legitimate and the priority child. Just give me your stuff.
Well, we're going to be here a while.
That's okay, we've got a lot of characters to go.
But yeah, Edmund spends the entire place scheming. First, he's getting Edgar out of the house, so he is the only one left to inherit. He does this by, again, framing his brother for conspiracy to commit murder, and makes sure that he keeps Edgar and Gloucester apart enough that they can't clear up the story between them. This gets Edgar exiled, and Edmund, therefore, basically legitimized. But then he wants to inherit faster, so he makes sure that he gets Gloucester in trouble too, leading to Gloucester's blinding. So he, in 2 easy steps, becomes an earl. Then, Goneril and Regan are both interested in him, so he kind of starts playing them against each other and kind of pursues them both and lets them both think. You know how it goes.
He basically deliberately sets up a love triangle.
Yep.
Or, well, more accurate, as I saw in a meme once, most love triangles are actually love corners, because it's usually two people targeting the same person they're both attracted to. And this is the rare case where the person in the center of the love corner is a dude, rather than the woman in a trio with two guys.
Yep.
That are fighting over her.
Yeah, he's basically completely unrepentant up until he gets his butt handed to him in a duel with his brother. And on his deathbed, it tells that he had decided to make sure that Lear and Cordelia, who were POWs, were going to be sentenced to death. But the pardon for them arrives too late to save Cordelia. So, yeah. And it's interesting, because you had made an observation about Edmund that I can't really fault.
Yeah, and this kind of falls back on a comment that we made in our prior review talking about Mistborn. That in that story, we had the character Kelsier, who was a bit of a narcissist and a bit self-aggrandizing and had a bit of a rebel without a cause complex, and that he kind of has a personality where he needs to have a system to push against, and that in any other story, there is a good chance he would be the villain. or at least not necessarily the good guy. Meanwhile, in this story, we have Edmund. Edmund is a bastard. He is the victim of an unjust system where his parentage and his lack of legitimacy in the eyes of the nobility makes him considered lesser. And that if he had stopped with just, I want to be recognized as the person that I am intelligent, I am physically capable and healthy, I am attractive, I am personable, I am in my father's good graces, I have everything I need to be a successful person except the proper lineage because of how our society unfairly puts such emphasis and importance on bloodlines in such a way as I am not considered legitimate. So, in another story, in another world, where he was, and if his personality was slightly altered to where he would be less inclined to go on murderous sprees, or if his father and brother were more quote unquote typical nobles, he might have been the good guy. And there are a lot of stories where there is a character with a similar quote unquote pedigree to Edmund with regards to the nobility. They're kind of a they're that kind of position makes you kind of a built-in underdog, and that's the kind of character that often people root for because they're the ones having to overcome an unjust system.
So basically, we have a reverse Kelsier, which means he's manipulating us even over here. God damn it, Kelsier. Also, I guess that will bring us to Edgar. A little bit naive. I think a lot naive, considering he's managed to never actually pick up on the fact that Edmund has some clear resentment toward him enough to work on something like this. Yeah, Edgar is generally a nice guy, if not the brightest. He's mostly he's manipulated, and yeah. So he ends up having to fend for himself, hiding as pretending to be a mad beggar so he doesn't get caught violating the exile that he has been unjustly saddled with because he's been accused of planning to kill his father.
How'd he get back up here?
So yeah, he, I think, learns a fair bit over the course of the story. He runs into Lear, kind of serves as sort of a crazy fool advisor for him too. But most importantly, as we mentioned before, he encounters his father, sees what's happened to him, they reconcile, and he steps up to basically pick up the slack after everyone else has been killed.
I guess Steiner can't wear that.
So yeah, I like Edgar. He's a nice character, but that's kind of mostly what there is to him, at least as far as what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about him.
Yeah, Tom of Bedlam is fun though, but again, that's the same guy. All right, Kent. Loyal to King Lear, defends Cordelia, gets kicked out for his pains, disguises himself as a servant, appeals up to King Lear. King Lear fails a spot check, hires him back on because whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of the question I did have was, how did he not know it? I might have missed something in like his description in when he was reintroduced as Caius.
Yes. Honestly, I think I'm going to go with opera logic here. He changed his costume so he's a different person.
You know what? That's as believable as anything else. Well, Zidane, this is your only useful ability, so I might as well equip it. Nope, I didn't want to go back up. Can I go in the store?
So yeah, he's loyal, but he's very much a hothead who doesn't always think situational awareness through.
Yep, and it eventually gets it. Well, not eventually. At the beginning of the story, it gets him fired. But he gets better.
Well, it gets him fired. It gets him put in the stocks, and it's just a whole thing. And then by the end, he basically implies that he's not going to live much longer without Lear.
Yeah. I mean, what's he got left for him after his liege that he has served most of his life, then got banished by, tricked into hiring himself again, and now was seen serving multiple times by underlings of the current reigning power in the area. And yeah, as you stated, he does not have I just did that. I already know how to do it. I just did it.
But thou must.
No, I get why they have the tutorial. That said, I wish they would have let me walk out on my own so I could grab the treasure chest. Zidane, do you have a hat? You already have a hat. Yeah, his days are numbered, long story short.
So yeah, that's most of the main characters. I also want to mention First Servant, who is fairly major for an unnamed character in that he tries to stop the blinding of Gloucester because it's gone too far, apologizes to Cornwall because I have served you my entire life faithfully, but I'm not going to stand by and let this happen, draw your sword, and kills Cornwall. He dies in the process because Regan backstabs him, but props to this guy.
And that's why you want to win the dueling thing at the beginning, because you get so much more starting money, and it makes this part so much easier. You can stock up on supplies. And save. Anything further on him?
No, I can't really think of anything else to add here.
All right. Who's next?
That's the last character. We've named everybody.
Ah,
Like I said, we've basically covered everybody with a name, so I brought up the unnamed guy.
okay.
Oh, the fool! Forgot the fool!
Oh, yes.
Well then.
Well, technically, there's also the King of France, but he really doesn't do a lot.
Well, I also mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, but you know what I meant. But yeah, the Fool! Oh, the Fool has some of the best lines, honestly. He really has some of the best lines, especially in the early parts of the story. He's the only guy that's really allowed to tell King Lear what everyone else is thinking. He can get away with a lot of things that other people can't because basically because of his position. I'm not super familiar with how fools and the that kind of role really worked in real life. But I do know that, at least as they are usually depicted in fiction, fools, court fools are often allowed to say things about other people in the court and get away with certain actions that the average person can't. That sound about right to you?
Yep. Because, yeah, that's kind of the job of a jester. Like, that's actually why satire is a thing. It's using humor as a shield while you poke at the issues that need to be addressed.
So we end up with this character who is allowed to challenge Lear in a way that other characters aren't, and kind of serve as that foil for much of the early parts of the story. And okay, that's that. Okay, there's another thing. Okay, that's just the spring again. But yeah, anything further you want to add about the Fool?
No, I think you covered it.
Then I believe that's where we'll call this an episode.
Alright, until next.
See y'all next time.
Bye.